Hi, this is Roger Moore, and you're listening to James Bond Radio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 142 of James Bond Radio, where today we're going to be talking about Bond 25, or Bond in general, really, versus Mission Impossible Fallout and the recent Mission Impossible films. With me, as always, is the man with the golden voice, part 2, Mr. Tom Sears. How are you doing, my friend? You all right?
I'm doing very well, man. I'm nervous about today's episode. I'm nervous because, as both of us said, we came out of Mission Impossible Fallout being blown away by the film. We both said it's kind of raised the bar with the action movie of recent times. And very excited, but at the same time a little bit saddened that Bond wasn't at the forefront waving that flag of amazingness. So, you know, it's going to be a very honest conversation today. It's going to be an uncomfortable conversation as well, because I don't want to say these things. I don't want to say that, you know, Tom Cruise jumping off the bottom of a helicopter or even flying the helicopter in the first place. You know, I don't want to say that that outranks a stuntman with a stitched on face inspector, but it does. And I just, you know, it's going to be an uncomfortable listen for a lot of Bond fans, I think. But it's a conversation I think we need to have, because we need to come up with a plan, Chris, which is how do we beat Ethan Hunt in Bond 25? That's the question that needs to be asked. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. What do you think about that?
I think that, well, it's a bang up. It's, you know, I can't wait to dig into it. There are definitely some answers that need to be found, and I think we'll hopefully come up with some decent suggestions. So yeah, I can't wait to get into it. It's going to be an interesting episode.
It is indeed. It is indeed. So before we get cracking then, come and follow us on all the social medias. Come follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Come to jamesbondradio.com. There's a lovely donate link over there if you want to send JBR a few bucks to keep the good ship JBR afloat. That's always appreciated, never expected. You can also leave us a voicemail over there as well. Look on the right hand side, there's a send a voicemail button. If you have a trivia question or a quote or anything along those lines, you just want to say hi or whatever it is, leave us a voicemail and we'll probably play it on an upcoming show. And of course, if you wouldn't mind leaving us a lovely glowing 5-star review on iTunes, because that helps us rank higher and attract more listeners. Not forgetting Instagram, of course. Old Agent B-Dob's over there. He's doing a bang-up job of managing that account for us and posting some rather wonderful photos every day. It's all.
And what is that
good.
Called? What's our Instagram account?
That is
called,
James
Tom?
Bond Podcast. Everywhere else is James Bond Radio. On Instagram, it's James Bond Podcast. So come and get involved in the old social medias. And of course, I feel like we should add this to the mix as well with my new abbreviated version of the social media, you know, blancmange, which is, if you are unaware, there are several regional JBR groups now, where JBR listeners are meeting up, hanging out, having good old chats. The most recent one to join was obviously JBR Dallas. Shout out to Derek over there, our man in Texas. So they're all listed on the website as well. You can see a little button on the right that says join your local JBR group. So get involved. It's all part of the experience, isn't it? Hanging out with other Bond fans and having a good time.
It's what it's all about, really. I think it's ultimately what this podcast has been set up to do, even if we didn't know it when we started.
Yeah.
And there will be a new JBR group in Melbourne, set up by Paul Jameson, now that he's sort of moved over there. So JBR Melbourne will be set up soon. So anyone in that area, get in touch, and the group page will be up and running pretty soon.
I suppose we should keep quiet about that, because we've sent him over there to be in deep cover, haven't we? He's on a mission, you see. So we probably shouldn't have mentioned that he's in Melbourne, because that's probably going to blow his cover.
And we should have given him an alias.
We should have done, shouldn't we?
Yeah. It's all right. We can edit it.
It'll be fine. We'll just replace him with the next 00. If it all goes wrong, it'll be fine. There's plenty where that came from. Good stuff. Now, Chris, we have a listener trivia question, don't we? From, we had a trivia question from quite recent, actually. Hendricks Jordan, our man in, I think it was Berlin, if I remember correctly.
That's right. Previously, he left a quote for us, a really nice quote. And this time, he's provided a trivia question. So should we have a listen to Hendricks' question?
Let's do it. Let's have a listen to Hendricks' question of the day.
Hello, Tom and Chris. Hendricks Jordan from Berlin, Germany here. Love your show, love your dedication and your enthusiasm. And today here's a trivia question for you. It concerns the Bond girls, and I'm only referring to the ones which Bond in the movies was obviously shagging with. So my questions rules out Bibi, Dahl, Rosa Clapp, Irma Bunt, and Judi Dench's M. First part of the question. Which Bond girl actresses were, and still are, actually older than the actors who have played them? Bond at the time in their respective movies? Second part, which Bond girl, I'm referring to just one woman, which Bond girl was the one who had the biggest age gap to her Bond star in her respective Bond outing? A little hint for you, those were all different Bond actors. All the best for you. Love your show and keep the brilliant work up, guys.
Well, excellent stuff. Love to hear from Henrik there. What a wonderful way he phrased that question. That made me laugh.
Me too. He's got a great voice as well, Henrik. A really good voice. I think he could almost, if he wanted to, add a little bit of villainy to the voice, and he'd be a cracking Bond villain, sort of. You know, you can imagine the old classic Blofeld behind the screen talking to the Spectre agents.
Yeah,
I think he's got it down, hasn't he?
Yeah, big time. I could almost imagine him reading like those spooky storybook audio books for kids. Do you know what I mean? Telling like stories of like trolls and ghosts and zombies and stuff. But yeah, I could totally see that voice being an old school Blofeld. Yeah, that's very nice. Good stuff.
Nice.
Excellent question, Henrik. That's obviously going to give us some food for thought. We'll think about that during today's episode, and we'll obviously answer that later on in the show. Good stuff. Good to hear from you again. So, Chris, I think it's time to roll a bit of theme tune and get cracking and talk about Mission Impossible, don't you?
Let's do it.
Who are you?
My name's Bond. James Bond.
Bond.
James.
Bond, what do you think you're doing?
Keeping the British hand up, sir.
Welcome to James Bond Radio. News, reviews, and discussion of all things 007.
Pussy. As you can see, I have no problem with female authority.
Oh, pipe down, 007.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to. Goodbye.
Okay, here we go, Chris. Now, where are we going to start? Where are we going to begin this very uncomfortable conversation that I'm very nervous about?
Right, I think we've got to start with our thoughts when we stepped out of the cinema immediately after watching the most recent one, Mission Impossible Fallout. Now, let us start then. Go for it, Tom. Let us know what do you feeling? Were you? Just let us know.
Well, I tell you how I was feeling. I was feeling like this throughout the whole movie. Okay. I'm going to just talk briefly about the previous two Mission Impossibles, right? Because there was a dude that tweeted us saying, I think the last three Mission Impossibles were better than the last three Bonds. To which I said, no, mate. And I hadn't seen Fallout at that point. And then you came along and you said the same thing on Facebook. And I had a similar response out loud in my living room. And I thought, all right, let's go and watch Fallout and see what's going on. And I went into it really wanting to find something that I could be like, nah, it's not as good. Nah, you're barking up the wrong tree there, mate. And I just didn't find that thing. It just wasn't there. And as I'm going through it, I'm like, there were so many cool little twists and turns done in such a cool way. Like there's often the risk with Mission Impossible where they you might overuse those masks a little bit or something, and it's just like it's a bit easy that way. But it was done in such a cool way this time where you weren't expecting it, and they didn't rely on that stuff. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's actually Tom Cruise doing all of these stunts. And I'm like, how would they have shot that without a stunt man? I just don't know. It has to be Tom Cruise up there. It's just got to be him. And then I'm like, it looks like he's actually flying that helicopter, I think. And then I think that's actually him hanging off the bottom of that helicopter and letting go and hanging on to the big testicle underneath the helicopter. And all that kind of stuff. And then the fight scenes and everything. And I remember the very end where there's that frantic helicopter chase and just being so on the edge of my seat, it's such a rare thing for me to actually feel like that in the cinema. I think the last time I felt like that was Spectre. I remember being gripped by that from start to finish at the Albert Hall that time. And coming out and feeling like, whoa, that was wicked, you know? And it was the same with this. And I've got my feet up on the chair and I'm just like can't take my eyes off the screen. That is such a rare thing for me to have in the cinema. And I came out and I saw it with the missus and we both felt exactly the same. We came out and we're like, shit, I think we just need to go and get a cup of tea and have a little sit down. Because we both like, you know, we'd burnt some calories watching that film, you know? And I sat down and I was like, I think that might be the best action film I've seen in a long, long, long time. And
since 2006,
perhaps? Since 2006, yeah. But then this feeling of sadness came over me. It was like, damn it, man, this is what Bond should be doing. You know, it should be Bond doing all this amazing stunt work. And now, after this film, as much as I love the last three Bond films, last four Bond films, sorry, as much as I love them, I'm looking at Tom Cruise hanging off that helicopter. And then in my mind's eye, I'm seeing the pre-title sequence of Spectre, where you've got that sort of CGI Daniel face on the stuntman. Same with the bike sequence in Skyfall on top of the Grand Bazaar. And I'm like, shit, man, they've just literally pissed all over those scenes. You know what I mean? They look a bit tacky. But they kind of always looked a bit tacky because you had that CGI thing and it was obvious. You know what I mean? Mm. But now it just kind of looks like, damn it, man! It so raised the bar. I think, but the whole film is great, but that stunt work is something like I've never seen before. And I came home afterwards. We went on YouTube, and there's like a 40-minute YouTube video, which is like behind the scenes and B-roll of them shooting the film. And it's not like a super edited together documentary. It's more like just literally back-to-back clips from stuff, you know, of them shooting the bike chase and all that kind of stuff. And he's up there, man. He's in that helicopter and he's literally flying it through these tiny little canyons, which is difficult enough just to do that. But he's also acting a scene. He's putting that helicopter exactly where it needs to be in relation to where the cameras are shooting him. He's acting and giving a performance at the same time. He's hanging off the side of another helicopter. He's letting go, landing on the big testicle, climbing back up. He's doing all that stuff and it's right there in his face and you know it's him. He's riding that bike through Paris. The camera is right in Tom Cruise's face. He doesn't have a helmet on. He's doing amazing riding through those streets. He's doing it all. And I can't run as fast as Tom Cruise. I went for a run this morning. I'm in Prague here for the summer. And I went for a run this morning. And I'm running.
Did you do it in a Tom Cruise style?
Well, this is the thing, right? Right? This is the thing that pains me the most, Chris. I'm running along the riverbank there where they shot Mission Impossible 1. I'm going to make a little location video for that. It's all there, basically. I run along that riverbank and I've got the Mission Impossible Fallout soundtrack in my ears. I've not got the Bond soundtrack, which is my usual go-to. I'm listening to Mission Impossible Fallout and I'm pretending to be Ethan Hunt in my brain. I'm not pretending to be Bond. And that worries me because do you know what I'd have said before Fallout? I'd have said Ethan Hunt, Ethan Schmunt, right? Not as good as Bond. But damn it, man, they delivered with Mission Impossible Fallout to such a high level that I can't ignore it, man. They proper did it. And I'm just like, all the power to Tom Cruise. What an amazing movie that is. But it makes me worry about Bond now because it should be Bond that's doing that and setting the tone. Mission Impossible should only ever be that follower who's struggling to keep up with Bond. It should never be the other way around. And it kind of is right now. So Bond 25 has to be an almighty special movie to kind of compete with what we've just got from Tom Cruise. Am I a traitor? Am I treasonous? Should I be hung? What do you think?
Well, there's lots that I can say to that. I think, firstly, I agree with you in terms of the film itself. My heart rate was going the whole way through pretty much. I think visually it was impressive, not just in the stunts, but some of the locations. I think, fuck, why didn't Bond use that? You know, that could have been brilliant in a Bond film. And, you know, when Tom Cruise is doing what he's doing, no one else in the world can do that. No other A-lister, no other Hollywood film star, no other actor in the world can do what he does because, well, for instance, the studios would not let it happen. It's the fact that he is the A-list megastar that he is. He is the producer of the films as well, and he is, you know, exceedingly rich. He can basically do what he wants. Obviously, he is Mission Impossible, and I think even, like, obviously Daniel's getting a bit more in with Eon and stuff like that, but he's obviously not part of it. But there's no way in you know, they would never let their lead actor. You remember Pierce Brosnan Die Another Day? He did that little run on the hovercrafts and got injured just doing something as simple as running from one hovercraft to another. And that set production back, you know, for a certain bit. And accidents can happen, but it is a complete anomaly watching an actor performing those stunts. It will never happen again, basically. It is only Tom Cruise that can do that, particularly someone of that stature within the film industry.
Here is my question, right? How on earth do they do that? Because the insurance bill for that film must be astronomical. Like I mean, obviously he did break his ankle at one point doing that jump, didn't he? And they shut down the production for, I guess it must have been a couple of months or something like that.
They started editing while that happened, which helped them as well.
So that's the thing, right? If you imagine the amount of people that still had to be paid during that time, you know, contracts have been signed for rentals and the bill for that time must have been astronomical. And what insurance company would put that money up? Because you know. I mean, it's lucky that he just broke his ankle, really. I mean, that's like the lightest injury he could have possibly gotten on that film. He could have quite easily done something way more serious, you know? And that's unheard of because every other actor is insured through the roof. And it's like, no, you know, recently it was like Tim wanted to do more stunts. Well, there's only certain things we're going to let you do, Tim. You know, we're not going to have you actually go over the edge with the Jeep and parachute down. That's not happening. But you can be on the top of the Jeep for a little bit. We'll just go a bit slower than we normally would. All that stuff. You know, there's no question of them ever doing it. It's like, yeah, all right, you can do a bit, but you can't go past that boundary because, you know, it's just the insurance companies won't let us do it. So how on earth do they even get that one angle through the insurance side of things?
Well, it's because Tom Cruise is Tom Cruise. Yeah. He brings the money to the table in terms of people go to see it because of him. And without him, there wouldn't be a film. So he has that much power that he's able to say, well, I want to do whatever I want to do. Yeah. He spent like 16 hours a day for 6 weeks learning how to fly a helicopter purely for that film. He did 110 skydives to get. And basically, when they filmed the skydive scene, they wanted to film it at dusk. That's 3 minutes worth of light that you can use in a single day to film. So he did 120 odd jumps, 110 jumps, or whatever it was, to capture that scene. You know, no one else as an actor can do that, but because he's got so much power, that is the reason he's able to do it. Okay, let me ask you one thing. Okay, so Bond and Mission Impossible are two different vehicles. I know they're both action films, but literally Mission Impossible is set up so it's one set piece after another, purely for action and stunt. You have very short scenes where he's chatting to Alec Baldwin or, a few scenes where he's with his team where perhaps something crazy isn't happening. But those are in the minority. If you watch that film, the amount of time that's allocated to stunts and the action is huge, comparable to Bond, even though Bond, you know, is so well known for its stunts. But there's so much more story and characterization with Bond. You do get that with Mission Impossible, but in terms of the ratio of characterization versus action, Mission Impossible is so much higher. Yeah. So I think that is in its favor. But if you strip back the actual stunt work for Mission Impossible, which I know is hard to do because that's what it's about, and you look at the story, you know, it's about missing plutonium, which Bond has done however many millions of times. It's simple, but Mission Impossible, they know that. They know what their audience want. They know that they don't care if the plot's a bit simple or a bit maybe vague or whatever, so long as they get decent a fast-paced action with some nice characters. And to be fair, they've got strong characters. If you think of the female roles in there with Ilsa Faust and all that lot, they do sort of give good characters all round. That is what they settle on. Their aim is to get a twisty, fast-paced thriller with as many amazing stunts as you can. Now, Bond wants to do brilliant action set pieces, but it's got more to it than that, you know. And as a character, Bond comes with however many years of history it is, and there is a formula there where certain things need to happen. Obviously, it's tweaked every now and again, but it's almost like Mission Impossible. It knows what it is now. Like if you look at the first one, Mission Impossible 1, it's a very it's different, complex thriller. Very different, yeah. Definitely. And I love Mission Impossible 1. I think it's brilliant. Brian De Palma, great film, but it's totally different to the others. You know, the second one and third one, they were still kind of finding their feet. I think the last three, Ghost Protocol, Rogue Nation and Fallout, they've known exactly what to do and they've kind of followed this formula, and it's delivered in spades. I think with Bond, at the moment, it doesn't quite know what it wants to be. You know, we've had Spectre, we've had Skyfall that have been two very different films. We've had the sort of quantum organization, we've had the Spectre organization, we've had the retconning in Spectre, which a lot of people didn't know, and some of the storyline that we had with the foster brother. I think Bond and Eon have been really brave in terms of branching out, starting again with Casino and it being so good. And then obviously you got Quantum is kind of like just a follow on. And then they've got the story for Skyfall, which in itself, the idea there was brilliant, but it was kind of at the wrong time, and it's kind of plot hole heavy, that particular film, and Spectre to a certain extent. And it's almost like Bond it's trying out different things, but it doesn't quite know what it needs to be. But
when you say Skyfall was the wrong time, what do you mean by that exactly?
I think basically if Skyfall, the storyline of Bond being old and everything happened now, it would make so much more sense.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. In terms of the timeline of the flow of his movies, that did feel strange. You've just got this new Bond. It's his third film. That is his Goldfinger. Do you know what I mean? That should be him in his prime. And that theme about him being old and past it was very jarring and odd, I thought. Yeah, that was a weird move.
Yeah, definitely. But then equally, the fact that Bond has been going so long, I think it's because I've had to change, re-energize the franchise. And we always say before, they get gritty and a lot of the time it gets more fantastical until it reaches that zenith of craziness, and then it starts again, or bringing in a new actor will reinvent it. There will never be another actor who plays Ethan Hunt. They might pass on the baton to someone else, like say Henry Cavill, if his character or something similar became another actor, but you can't see anyone else playing Ethan Hunt doing that stunt work. You just can't.
Well, I suppose the thing is that obviously it wouldn't be Henry Cavill because he died a rather gruesome death at the end. But I think with that they did try that with the Bourne Identity movies, didn't they?
And it didn't work.
No,
they had
it was
Jeremy
just
Renner,
that one off, and I think they've made another Bourne with Matt Damon since.
They did. They did.
I feel like it's probably inevitable that they will continue. They'll at least try and continue the Mission Impossible movies with somebody else after Tom's finished his run. But I mean, that dude is just a machine. I don't know whether he's drinking the blood of 100 virgins every night or something, but he's 56 years old, the same age Roger was in A View to a Kill, and he is doing stuff that people a third of his age would struggle to do. Do you know what I mean? It's just, the dude is unbelievable. Like, he's totally blown me away. And I must admit, before watching this, I mean, I always kind of enjoyed Tom Cruise movies and stuff, but I kind of had that opinion of like Tom Cruise, he's that dude that's a bit weird. Do you know what I mean? He's a bit funny. But after seeing this, I have nothing but absolute pure admiration for the geezer. I'm just like, I've never known a movie star to be able to do the things he does in the way that he does them. He's just absolutely blown me away on every level. And I've been watching loads of interviews with him and stuff, and just like he's such a unique person that it's just if he could play Bond, I'd want him to play Bond, but he's obviously not right for it. You know what I mean?
No, but that's the thing. He is so unique in what he does that Bond won't be able to replicate that. So putting that to one side, well, first of all, I mean, obviously Mission Impossible will take a huge amount from Bond. We mentioned the action sequences just in Fallout alone. So you got the Halo jump. Obviously we had one in Tomorrow Never Dies, although this one a lot more went on and it was a lot better, I think.
The way they shot that, I loved it. The way he's, there's that moment of hesitation. Cavill jumps and then he walks up to the camera, turns and runs and just dives straight off, and that's all one like unbroken shot for quite a while there. And it's just like, that's how they started it, just literally Tom Cruise jumping out the back of a plane. Amazing. Anyway, go on, carry on.
So they've obviously done that, but again, it's a step up from the Tomorrow Never Dies ones by a big sort of margin. The bathroom fight, man. So we've had Casino Royale, and Casino Royale is the only sort of recent Bond film that I'd say can match it in terms of the action stakes. I think the car chasing Quantum is there, and there are a few others we'll go into later. But you know what you said, how you've never seen anything that sort of got you like that. When you watched the parkour scene in Casino Royale, did you get that same feeling?
Oh,
I certainly did.
Yeah.
And that was, they didn't use CGI. They had wires, which they obviously erased in post. But it was still Daniel Craig doing a lot of it. I know he had the stuntman, but the way it was shot was so much better.
Yeah, there's that one little bit where he's running up that crane to jump onto the wall, and when he does that jump, there's a little bit of CGI-ness going on there. but I can forgive that. That sequence is still like, in terms of a foot chase, I think that's not been bettered since. Like,
no,
that's not. And the bathroom fight here, it's a great fight, but it's not, to me, this isn't like that kicks Bond's ass in terms of like that bathroom fight at the beginning of Casino where he's getting his double O, making his first kill, I should say. Like that to me, like they stand shoulder to shoulder. I think those two fights, they're equally as brutal and equally as cool. I think,
definitely,
you know, obviously a little bit different, but there's an element of comedy in the Fallout one, in the sense that dude is so like hard, and like it's actually quite funny to see everybody get just thrown around so much.
Yeah.
Whereas with Casino, it's pure like. You just, when you see those kind of close-ups of Daniel's eyes when he's looking at him lying on the floor and stuff, and he's trying to get his breath in, just how brutal that is. That's a very brutal, dark fight, you know, all in black and white especially. But yeah, it just, you know, not to knock the Mission Impossible one, because that is equally as good.
Well, that's you kind of what you just said there. You've noted one of the biggest differences currently with Bond. I know with Spectre they went a little bit lighter, and there was definitely more human than the previous three, but like the humor in Mission Impossible is throughout the film. You know, it's almost a bit of a cheek. It's almost a bit, you know, they know how crazy this is and they let the audience in on it. And with Bond, it's been so gritty and dark that it hasn't had that aspect to it, really.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, right? Here are my thoughts. I don't agree that the previous two Mission Impossibles are better than the previous three Bonds. I don't think Ghost Protocol or Rogue Nation are better. They're good films. Thoroughly enjoy them. And there's definitely some stuff in there, like the sandstorm sequence, for example. That's a standout moment. There's a lot of standout moments in those two films, but I wouldn't say they're better. And I'll tell you why. Because with Bond, we judge him by a different set of criteria than we do Mission Impossible. We let Mission Impossible get away with a lot of things that we wouldn't let Bond get away with, right? In the sense that if Benji was in a Bond film, we would all, across the board, hate him, wouldn't we? Do you know what I mean? The Simon Pegg character, that bumbling idiot kind of thing. If he was in a Bond film, he would be the Jar Jar Binks of the Bond universe, and we'd all hate him. So there are elements like that you just wouldn't get in a Bond film. There's that sequence. Do you remember where what's the dude that was in that Bourne remake? He was in
Jeremy Renner.
Jeremy Renner. Do you remember there's that sequence where he puts on that like chainmail suit, and then there's that little buggy
the
thing
maglev suit, with the robot.
Like if you'd have
thing.
put that in a Daniel Craig Bond film, I think we'd all start groaning a little bit and be like, oh, like I feel like those previous two Mission Impossibles, they are more a similar feel to what the Brosnan movies were. They've got that element of lightness, and they do have that more fantastical thing. Like if I saw Daniel don a chainmail suit and be magnetically lifted through a thing, I'd be like, oh, no. Yeah. This is the wrong, this is not the way to go with Daniel's Bond. You know, maybe back in the day with Roger or Pierce, but like that just doesn't feel right. And so I think the difference is that there's a lot less we would let Bond get away with. And those two things there are two examples in my book. What do you think about that?
No, I completely agree. I mean, I could see Pierce doing that suit and definitely not Daniel. But I think that boils down to, that's because, you know, it's not just Ethan Hunt. He's not a lone wolf. Whereas for the majority, Bond is, you know, Mission Impossible, he's got his team there. And that gives you the opportunity for humour with your Benji, or maybe tense scenes when one of his team get caught and he has to try and rescue him. So there's added sort of story plot lines that you can get from having that team. And I know, like in a couple of the recent Bonds, we've had the MI6 crew out there, but it's not quite the same. And for the majority of people, that, you know, that wasn't right. It didn't feel right. It should be Bond out there doing it mainly. So I think that's kind of a big difference in it as well. So like, are you from your point of view, then you love Fallout. Is it just the action and the stunt work that has blown you away so much that makes you think that the film is epic? Is it just that? If you stripped away that or just thought about maybe the storyline or anything else or whatever, would you still say it's that good a film, or is it pure? Or is it, you know, that's what I'm trying to get across.
Well, I suppose it's difficult to say that because it is an action film, and the Bond films are action films as well, and that is such a key part of the history of Bond. It's those crazy stunts. It's that amazing foot chase, African rundown. It's that amazing, you know, the fact that they flipped the Aston Martin 8 times or whatever it was in Casino. It's all those things, you know, the barrel roll jump, Man with the Golden Gun. It's all those things that contribute to it being such a memorable and cool series. So if you were to take all that out, by the same token, if you took a lot of the action set pieces out of Bond, it's like, would it stand up as much? Do you know what I mean? And I get what you're saying in the sense that, maybe if you look at that first Mission Impossible film, it is more of a traditional twisty-turny thriller. It's a bit of a whodunit, like a paranoia movie, rather than your sort of formulaic action films, which I'd say the last 3 Mission Impossibles are. That's not a bad thing to be a formulaic action film, because most of them are, you know what I mean? It's how you do that formula that is the good or the bad thing. So I think that's a huge part of it is the stunts and stuff, and just doing all those things just a bit better than Bond's been doing in recent years. Like I said the other day in a recent podcast, the sequence at the end of Spectre on the little boat in front of the Houses of Parliament, I think most people would agree that's obviously the weakest part of that story. And to me, it feels like, it's like, okay, we've got this amazing location, the Houses of Parliament. We've got Big Ben right there. Let's just do that scene in front of the Big Ben. So it just is a cool location. It feels a bit shoehorned in. Whereas that foot chase in Fallout, where he's trying to catch up with Henry Cavill and he's running across the bridge, and you've got all of central London in the background there. The chase up the Tate Modern, up on the top of the chimney, the helicopter goes away. You've got that sweeping shot. And I mean, like, fuck, man, that looks amazing, that sequence.
Even the bit, where he goes into the office and everyone's looking at him and he's about to jump out the window. Yeah. Now, that's humour, but I could still see Daniel Craig doing that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I could see that.
I could still see Bond going through an office and having to jump out and everyone sort of looking at him.
It reminds me a little bit of the bit where he jumps on the tube train in Skyfall. It's like, he's in a rush to get home. Like that bit. Yeah.
I could definitely imagine Bond doing that.
That whole foot chase you could have put in Bond, and it's just like, if you're going to use a location as amazing as London is, it's kind of like they used it so well in Fallout, whereas Spectre to me felt just a bit tacked on. Like the only reason that took place right there was because it looks cool. Do you know what I mean? It felt a bit shoehorned in. And I guess like obviously MI6 is just down the road, which is where the immediate action before that takes place. So I guess it kind of makes sense, but I don't know. It's almost like with Mission Impossible, it's like that's where they are. So that's where it's almost like it's in that setting, and it's not even making a big deal out of it. It's like, it's an amazing chase, and it just sort of happens to be there, and it just makes sense.
I'll tell you something about Mission Impossible, which I found out recently. They choose the locations before they even start writing a script.
Do they?
So they know where they're going to be filming before they've even put pen to paper on what the story is going to be. So they know they're going to have a hand-to-hand fight, or at least they know there's going to be this big cliff top ending. Yeah. They know they're going to there's places in Paris, in London and Paris where they're going to do some chases. All of these are locked down. Christopher McQuarrie was saying he gets all the locations locked down, and then they know where, basically, because the location manager says, well, I don't know what the script is, and he says, this is the sort of thing we're looking for, go out and find it. They get the locations, they lock them down, and then they write the story around the location. Now that definitely does not happen with Bond or the majority of other films. They always have the script, and then they say, right, where can we find something that looks like this? Whereas Mission Impossible, right, we've got to find the best places, and then we've got an idea of what it's going to be. There's going to be a MacGuffin, there's going to be chases, we just need to find the best places to film that sort of thing. And then they go looking, and then they start evolving the story around that, which is, I don't think any other film does that.
Well, I suppose when you compare that to Spectre, I feel like they probably had the idea of going back to MI6 and being in the wreckage of MI6. That I would imagine they'd kind of got that in the bag in the thought process. And then obviously Big Ben being a part of that. But I think most of Bond fans would probably be in agreement that rather than having that sequence at the end, because that did feel a bit like, okay, how can we have a really emotional climax? I know we'll get all the pictures on the wall of like Vesper and all these people that he's faced off with, and have this sort of like fun house in MI6, and that's where the showdown with Blofeld. Whereas really, it should have been a massive fight in the crater base. You know what I mean? I feel like I think the majority of people would have been more happy with that.
Completely.
And again, that's what most people say, isn't it? It's the final act is the big issue with Spectre there. But yeah, I just think it's kind of like that chase in London obviously is the sort of closest comparison to being in central London there. And I just think they did it so well that it was almost like whereas Spectre, to me, that climax feels like, oh look, it's right in front of Big Ben, isn't that cool? Whereas,
and also it's at night, and you don't get to see as much at night, and you can get away with supposedly the stuntman and stuff like that when it's clearly in the daylight, and the general public are involved, that are just around, and you can see clearly what's happening, and obviously Tom's doing all the whole stunts. That makes it even more sort of amazing. Than it normally is. It's to me, it's like the difference is it's like, oh look, we're in front of Big Ben, isn't that cool? Whereas Mission Impossible almost is like, it doesn't even matter that we're here. Look at this cool chase. Do you know what I mean? And it's just it's there for the right reason, I think, in Fallout. Yeah. Well, let's have a little think about the Craig films. Okay, so we're talking a lot about the action here. So I can tell you a great action scene in each of the Craig films, and I could probably tell you equally an action scene in each of the Craig films which needs to get better. So we mentioned the parkour chase, the car chase in Quantum of Solace, superb. I think the fist fights with Bond and Patrice, both the one on the train and the one in the shadows, I thought that was great. And then Spectre, you got the train fight with Hinks, superb, really hard hitting, really brutal. Now those are four cracking action scenes, but then if you think about the plane scene in Spectre with the snow, it comes down, and it's just kind of meh. It's nothing.
I know
really
what
happens.
you're saying about
that. You think about Quantum of Solace in terms of the boat chase and that plane chase with the dodgy parachute jump. Bond, I don't know what it is, whether it's just not spectacular enough, or Bond never seems in danger enough, or it's just a bit tepid compared to what we
I know what you're
are
saying.
hoping for.
I would say it's kind of like that. It's not like that's going to go down as a classic Bond sequence. Like that plane sequence to me is kind of like, it does the job. It's good. It's reasonably exciting, but it doesn't blow you away. And I think that's the one of the huge issues with this discussion is that pretty much every sequence in Fallout proper blew me away. And like those examples you just gave there, kind of like, yeah, all right, that's a solid action sequence, but did it blow me away? No.
So do you think, okay, obviously we mentioned an emergency podcast. You, at one point, I'll quote that you said it's not possible to have like an amazing action scene in every time. And then you were like, actually, yes, it is. But so we know it is possible. Okay. Is it the fact that the action scenes in Bond are not pushing the boundary enough? They're not having enough creative input, or they're not sort of thinking outside the box enough, or there's just there's got to be something there. Is it a case of, right, we need a snow scene, we're going to do this, or how about a plane, that sounds good, rather than thinking about Bond being in danger or the spectacle, or what? Or what do you think it is?
It's a tough one. It's okay. If I look at a sequence like the car chase in Quantum, right? Yep. That to me is a standout car chase. I would say the boat chase in The World Is Not Enough, that's a standout boat chase. There are things that happen in that you haven't really seen before on that level. And they're like, for example, like one of the things I love about that boat chase is like how rough that water is sometimes, and that Q-boat like goes up and it almost looks like it's going to tip over, and it doesn't quite, and then it's back in. And I remember seeing that for the first time.
You can see Brosnan on it as well, can't you? And he's proper getting wet and all over the place, and that's what you need.
I love that stuff, man. And it was, I remember watching that for the first time and being like on the edge of my seat during that and being like, oh, like he nearly went, And I feel like for a stunt, an action sequence to really thrill you, there has to be that feeling of peril of like, oh, that almost went the wrong way. Do you know what I mean? And it didn't quite. I feel like you have to like dance on that tightrope of like, shit, is this dude
like
going to die?
Daniel doing the jump and only just hanging on to the crane when he lands, and he's really hard hitting. It's what you need. You need that impact, like the bathroom fight in Casino, and equally in Mission Impossible. You're hearing every punch and every smash against the sink or the wall, and you need to be in that scene. You need to almost feel. The reason that both of us finished Mission Impossible and it felt like we'd had a workout is because mentally our heart rate was like to the max the whole way through, because you're watching a film and it's putting you in the scene, and when you're thinking, oh my god, that guy, that must have hurt so much, you're experiencing that in a weird sort of
you're
virtual
almost putting
reality
yourself
way.
in it. Yeah,
Exactly. And if you're not getting that, and if you're just watching action and it's not G'ing you up, and it could be pleasant, it could be, it could be interesting, but if you're not getting that heart rate, sort of crazy level, then it's not doing its job, because the ultimate job of an action scene is to make you sit on the edge of the seat and go, fuck me, I can't believe what I'm watching. Well, that is crazy.
Do you know what is a perfect example of that from Fallout is most of the film, but that helicopter chase at the end, where every time I thought, oh yeah, I see where this is going, it went up a notch, and it was like, how's he going to stop this helicopter? There's Henry Cavill, he's not even aware that he's being chased yet. Ethan's in this other helicopter and he's like working out, how do I get them? And then he makes a connection with the big testicle hanging down the bottom. And I'm like, oh yeah, he's going to drop it on top of them. It's going to be fine. He's going to land his helicopter. Then there'll be a fist fight. But then obviously he missed. And then it just kept, the stakes just kept getting that little bit higher. And like there's that last bit where he's like running out of petrol or whatever it is. And it's like his helicopter's about to like conk out. And he's like, no, not when I'm so close. And he just like rams them. And then it's kind of like it slides down, and then there's that whole sequence where they go over the edge, and then they're in the same helicopter, and it just keeps falling down, and it's just like, oh my god,
it's tense as hell, isn't it?
And then
so
there's
tense.
It's just that massive precipice that they're on, and I'm like, this is. Bond should be there, man. He should have done that sequence, And it just kept you guessing that whole time of like, shit, how far is this thing actually going to go, And then every sort of thing I thought, okay, here's where it kind of evens out. It didn't. It just went higher and higher, and that is what needs to happen to blow you away. The parkour chase is a perfect example. That moment when Malaka does the big jump, lands gracefully, and he's off, and then Bond stops and he sort of hesitates for a minute. Yeah. And then there's that huge wide shot and he makes the jump, and then you're like, oh, it's that same feeling of like, fuck, is he going to make it? Yeah. And then he does. And it's just the genius of that chase is of how Bond is outclassed there, in the sense that Malaka is so graceful, and he does like when they run past that wrecked car, he does this weird flip through the windscreen and he's gone, and Bond sort of runs around it. He goes through that little gap above the wall, and Bond just charges through the wall. Like he's just doing everything he can to keep up with him. And like as the audience member, you're like, holy shit, man, this is like the most intense foot chase I've ever seen. And it still stands up to this day. That's still an amazing sequence. Yeah. But I would say since then, I don't think we've had anything that really lives up to that. The car chasing Quantum is great. As most people often say, the jump cuts do, like, you want to be able to see more. It's like you can barely even see him change gear and stuff. You know what I mean? So that's an irk for me with that. But the frantic feel of that chase is very much like on the edge of your seat, and the cool way it ends of time to get out. And I'm like, yes, that's what I want to see from my Bond. I didn't really get. I felt like the Skyfall thing on the train and stuff at the beginning. That to me was like a functional sequence. I never had that like nail biting moment. Yeah, it did its job and it was solid, but it wasn't like whoa. And I would say Spectre, that pre-title sequence is amazing. It's a bit different, isn't it? Because it's not like a super high octane throughout. It's almost it's got a bit of a dance to it, isn't it? It's like it starts slow and then there's all action, then it's a bit slow again, and it's a bit of a different beast. But I absolutely love that. You've got that cool helicopter stunt in there and you're like, yeah, that's cool. But man, I think Fallout is kind of like, it's almost like if you took the greatest hits of Bond for the last sort of 10 Bond films and you stuck them together in one film, bang, 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 one after the other, and just raised the game on all of those stunts. Because like you said, a lot of it is obviously inspired by Bond. There's that lane breakout sequence is very much like Sanchez in the river and stuff. Completely. You know what I mean? And Lane is Blofeld essentially, isn't he? He's Ethan Hunt's Blofeld. He's threatening his wife and stuff, and he's the head of this organization. And the what are they called? The Apostles?
The Apostles are like Spectre, basically. Almost. They could be, couldn't they?
They are Spectre. I mean, that is they are using the Bond template and just doing their own thing. But like, I mean, just with how we were left with Blofeld at the end of Spectre, again, it's a similar thing. Blofeld taken into custody. Lane is still in custody, but there's just something like, I feel like what they're doing with Lane is just sort of better than what they ultimately did with Blofeld. Do you know what I mean? I love Christoph Waltz as Blofeld, and I love Spectre, but it's kind of like, damn, man, like it's just, there's more danger from Solomon Lane than there is from Christoph's Blofeld. I think I'm more scared of him than I am of. Yeah. But again, there are things I really love about Christoph's Blofeld. That sequence in the meteor room where he just kind of looms up out of the darkness. I feel that's such an underrated moment, because everyone was talking about Silver's entrance in Skyfall and how he has that amazing monologue and he walks in from a distance in all that one long unbroken shot. Everyone was talking about that. Nobody mentioned the meteor room, and I love how he just literally, you hear his voice and then all of a sudden he just looms out of the darkness in a super creepy way, like he's just been in there watching, which is obviously what he's been doing the whole time. And I love that sequence. I think it's great. But dude, it's almost like it's almost like, because with Rogue Nation was the last one, wasn't it? And that was a very, very similar story and plot to what Spectre was.
It was.
You're very like side by side. And of course, if things had been on target, we would have got Bond 25 this year alongside Fallout. You know what I mean? So it's almost like Fallout, if they carry on that thing of kind of level pegging in terms of story, like we would, that was what Bond 25 would be doing, a similar job to Fallout. But I struggle to see how you would top that. It's almost like the extra delay. And if we are going to get another extra delay for 25, then I feel like maybe that's a good thing, just to allow Bond to regroup a little bit. I've talked for ages there. I just did a massive dump into your ears. So I'm going to be quiet and let you have a word now.
I don't mind. Okay, so let's look at a slightly different part of it. Let's have a look at the gadgets. Okay, so Bond with Craig, he's come back and the gadgets have been a lot less than we've had previously. Yeah. Okay, they've kind of, a gun and a radio. We don't go in for all that sort of thing. Various comments. Now the gadgets in Mission Impossible have been so good. Real high-tech stuff, but not cheesy in any way. Just like gadgets that Bond should be having.
Give me some examples. What are those gadgets?
Okay, so I'll tell you what, I'll go for ones that are similar to Bond that they've used, and then I'll tell you some of the other ones. Okay, so he has a reversible jacket in Ghost Protocol, similar to Octopussy. He had there's those contact lenses for facial recognition. Now, did you ever hear that story of the alternate Live and Let Die pre-title scene where it was going to be set in this garden, and some guy was going to come over and give Bond these contact lenses which had information, I think it was a microdot or something, it had some sort of information on these contact lenses, but it then turned out that other guy was a double agent, and Bond threw him over this hedge, and it ended up being that this garden was on the top of a real high-rise building, and the guy fell to his death. Now that visually is incredible, and it sounds brilliant. So I mean, it's a shame they didn't go for that, and that's something they could easily incorporate into a future Bond, like something along those lines would be excellent. So contact lenses. The flute gun in Rogue Nation is a bit like the whole ski pole gun in Spy Who Loved Me. You've got the voice changer, which is a bit like Blofeld's voice box. The mask maker, again, a bit like his disguise. Retinal scanners. The remote control car they had in Fallout, very similar, obviously, to Tomorrow Never Dies, and a bit From the World Is Not Enough as well. But now let's talk about some of the other gadgets, okay, in recent ones. I mean, but even back in Mission Impossible 1, you had the chewing gum, red light, green light, and all that. And it's a bit cheesy, but, it is still quite good. You had that metal-eating foam in Mission Impossible 3 that they sprayed onto the side of the truck, which kind of just ate the metal. And I thought that was brilliant. And that could have been in like a Batman film, getting a Joker out or something along that. The gecko gloves in Ghost Protocol, I think that's amazing. I know maybe that's almost a bit too comic booky for Bond, or at least for Daniel's Bond, but I still think they're brilliant gadgets. You've got that inflatable air cushion. Do you remember at the start with Lea Seydoux, and that guy jumps off the roof just before she kills him, and he throws that little thing on the ground and it suddenly inflates so he can land on it. I mean, that would have been a great Bond gadget, I think. You mentioned the maglev suit, maybe not for Daniel, but for someone else. You've got that projector screen, when they're going down the corridor. And they've got that little thing that makes water drip. I mean, again, that level of humour is not Daniel Craig, is it? It's definitely not.
I know what you're saying, right? But all of these things are cool. They're very cool. They raise a smile when you see them on screen. Like, especially there's that sequence where they're walking down the corridor with that weird projector screen on and stuff is really cool and funny and really clever. But I feel like if I'm going to go through these again, and I would say, okay, the gecko gloves from Ghost Protocol, I think that's a bit too comic book for Daniel's Bond. I think a lot of these are, if we were in the realms of a Brosnan, I could see him doing all of these things.
Okay, what about the one where he's got a palm print on the window of his car and that opens the door? Simple. It's only a small thing. I think Daniel could have that. Yeah. And what about the wetsuit with the oxygen level? Or do you think that's too comic booky?
No, I think that one is more of a device to let the audience know how much air he's got more than anything else, isn't it? It's like like when you've got the flashing lights on his little signature gun. Do you know what I mean? There's no need to have flashing lights. It's just to let us know that something's happened there, you know. And I think that underwater sequence there where you see his oxygen level is just because obviously you can't talk when you're underwater, so it's just a way of ramping up that tension. It's like when you see a countdown timer and you're like, shit, you got to defuse the bomb. It's that. So I'd say that's more of a dramatic device than a cool gadget, though visually it does look cool. I would say all of these gadgets are cool, but I don't want to see any of them in a Daniel Bond film. I think that's the wrong tone. And I think that's what I mean about the previous two. I don't think they're better than the previous Bond films. I think ultimately they are their own thing. If we were still in the 90s and it was a Brosnan-style Bond, I could see him doing all of that. I could see him doing the chainmail suit. I could see all of that because they were that more exaggerated heightened style.
So
hold on, with Daniel's Bond, it's kind of like it's what we got in Casino was something we so drastically needed, which was bringing it back to earth, bringing it back to Fleming. Realness, and that's why we didn't get Q for a little while and all those kinds of tropes and stuff. And that's why when we did get Q, it was very understated. It was like, here's just a gun and a radio. You know, in Spectre, it was kind of like that's not the vibe they're going for, and I don't feel like that's missing. You know, I don't feel like it's like fuck, Bond needs more gadgets. If anything, in this day and age, Bond needs less gadgets. He needs to go downwards and have things like the attaché case again, like opening a book with a little hidden compartment in is always cool, no matter what generation you're living in. Whereas having a phone that you control your car with was great in the 90s, but not anymore. Everyone's got one of these. They've got an iPhone in their pocket. They can do amazing things. I can look at boobs anytime I like with this thing. And it's like, it's a different world now. And I think Daniel's Bond needs to go more down that route of like old school spying with that stuff. Things like ripping out a hair and putting it across the crack. That's what we need from Daniel's Bond. I don't want to see him with magic sticky gloves walking up the side of the building. That's not the right feel for him, I don't think.
No, I agree. Yeah, with Daniel, definitely. But that's not to say that Bond can't stay hard-nosed and gritty forever. It will eventually change, whether that's with the next one or someone after that. So I totally see where you're coming from. I think within the world of Mission Impossible, they work really well.
Totally.
And for those type of films, I think it works great. You know, So looking at a couple of the other, I mean, Bond is such a big influence. That bit we mentioned in the Tate Modern where he's hanging off the lift, obviously straight out of Skyfall. And you know, Christopher McQuarrie is a writer and the director. Now, that could be another reason. So he obviously did the last one as well as Fallout. He did Rogue Nation as well, and maybe having someone who is a writer and a director, you know, there's less chance of plot holes not being there. I don't know. I still think with Spectre there were certain bits which I wasn't satisfied with, and equally with Skyfall. And I think looking at the scripts, the story threads, there are big gaping holes in them. If you're going to be analytical about it, then there are. But then they are more complex stories, aren't they?
I do think you do get that. I mean, that is just the style of Bond. I mean, there are going to be plot holes in a lot of them when you really think about it. I mean, one of the standout moments that made me grin in Fallout was just before that skydiving sequence when they go down to Paris and they're going to meet the dude in that huge party. Is Ethan goes, "Oh, we've intercepted his the wristband ID number so we can get in." I'm like, how did you do that? How did you know he had a wristband? How did you know what the ID number was? Let's just not explain that. And we just have. We just got that and let's move on and not think about it.
It's because it's going so fast that you don't think about it until afterwards.
But that's what Fleming himself said, isn't it? It's like you give people a good time and you move the story along so quickly that you don't really stop to think about all those different things. So, I mean, in the last two movies, and I know a lot of people will massively disagree with me, and that's absolutely fine, but I came out of Skyfall disappointed because there was a lot of things that I was just like, man, what we got in it was because I wanted the Spectre story. That's what I really wanted after the build up to this quantum group and all that kind of stuff. And it was a left turn from that. And I was like, fuck, I really wanted that. So that's one of the things I was disappointed with. But two, it was that kind of stuff of like, you know, where the tube train comes down just at that very moment and smashes through. And I'm like, well, how did you know it was going to be right in that spot, right at that time? I really didn't like the Aston Martin having the Goldfinger machine guns. It just felt like a bit like a cheap choice of being like, oh, look, Goldfinger. You know what I mean? It didn't feel like the right choice for me. And yeah, there were lots of holes in that. Equally, there are holes in Spectre. But for me, that's the story I wanted to see. I wanted to see the secret organization. I wanted to see them all tied together. It was so exciting to me, that concept. And I loved it. So I can't remember where we were going with that now. I just got so excited about talking about Spectre for a minute that I've lost my train of thought. But what were we talking about? Help me.
Okay, I think eventually we're going to get to the point of what do we want to see out of Bond 25?
Yeah.
Obviously, we don't want Bond to be a copycat.
No.
We don't want Bond, Bond should be at the forefront of everything when it comes to sort of action films and spy thrillers and stuff like that, spy action films. Bond has to be at the top. It has to be. Yeah. And clearly, for whatever reason, audiences haven't thought that in terms of money.
Yeah, hold on a minute though. The Daniel films have been drastically more successful than Bond has been for decades. So Skyfall itself, just that one, Spectre, say what the critics of it want to say, but that was still a massively successful film and way more successful than a lot of the previous Bonds for literally decades. So there's nothing wrong with Bond in that sense. Like, we are totally in a golden age of Bond again at this point, where it's more popular than it has been for a very, very long time. So let's not forget that. And B, let's not forget that Mission Impossible is the copycat here. There's a lot of these tropes that without Bond, Mission Impossible wouldn't even be a thing. So it's Bond is the daddy. But on this occasion, I feel like Mission Impossible has just outclassed the daddy. Do you know what I mean? And it's like you say, how do we get back on top of that for Bond 25? And I think the answer to that question is you attack from a different angle, right? You don't try and be like, okay, well, let's do a helicopter stunt that's way better. Daniel, get in the cockpit and learn to fly this thing. You don't do that because you are not going to win. You know what I mean? You're not going to win from that angle. No. But if you be like, okay, we're not going to top those stunts, so we have to come in from somewhere completely different and maybe be like, okay, let's make a very different type of film. Let's make a Bond film that goes back to more like a From Russia with Love, where it's more about the character and the tension rather than a balls out action film. Because like you say, Fallout is set piece to set piece to set piece to set piece. And it's like the way you would combat that in terms of Bond is just to make a really kick-ass, twisty-turny thriller Bond, the likes of which we haven't seen for a long time, like a Casino, like a Majesties, like a From Russia with Love.
I think a Casino is a perfect example there, because if you think we mentioned the parkour chase loads, but think of the stairwell fight. How amazing was that? Hard hitting, and like that was another one that got your heart going, thinking, oh my God, this is crazy. And so I think with Bond, you obviously you can't have set piece after set piece. That's not what Bond is. It's not like that. So they are completely, even though they are, spy films, they are completely different beasts, so to speak. And I think Bond, it just needs, it's all down to the script, isn't it? I think you need a really solid script with great characterization, and within those plot and storylines, you just need really high intensity action scenes. That doesn't mean one after another all the way through, because that's not what Bond is. But when you get to one, you want one that blows your socks off. You really do. And I think maybe it just needs to step up that side of things as well. You need at least you need at least two or three, I think, that hit you. Obviously one or two major ones, and then one which is still decent. And maybe some that are a little less generic. And that's not.
Yeah,
it's hard to say.
I know what you're saying. But that plane sequence in Spectre is a generic action sequence that could have been in, a Jason Statham straight to DVD action film. Do you know what I mean? It could have been, and it pains me to say that as well. And, maybe it's like often people say about, like, we've talked about this recently, the car chase in Spectre, it wasn't this huge thing.
Some people hate it.
Yeah,
some people hate it because
but
it's not quantum.
Yeah, and it's, that sequence wasn't really meant to be that. It had a different job to do. You had to push the story forward during that sequence. Yeah. The phone call to Moneypenny and all that kind of stuff. It was more of a light-hearted thing. You get the dude in the little Fiat car and the airbag.
Yeah,
and all that
which
kind
I
of
love
stuff.
that bit. I thought that was really good.
That was like an old school Bond sort of thing that would happen there.
And when he gets the song, when 009 song and all that, it's just it's like a humorous take on it, isn't it?
It's not trying to be that ultimate car chase. So when people say, "Oh, it was a shitty car chase," it's like, well, it's a bit of a silly thing to say that because it wasn't trying to be one. It's a different beast, that one. So I think ultimately you're not going to get that. It's like we said about A View to a Kill, isn't it? Like when you've got an older Roger, and a lot of people wince at some of the action sequences in there, like with the fight sequences and stuff. And it's like the way to get around that when you've got you've got an older Bond who's not as physically able as he once was, is to not put him in those situations. Make it a much more sneaky Bond film where you don't have to see him jump off a rooftop. Do you know what I mean? And play to the strengths rather than try and compete with Tom Cruise, because there is no competing with Tom Cruise. You're just not going to compete on that level. Daniel is not going to spend 16 hours a day learning how to fly a helicopter. No. It's just not going to happen. So I feel like you have to play to Bond's strengths. And what are those things? Let's think of some things he's done very well in recent times. You've got the car chase in Quantum. That's an outstanding car chase in my book. The foot chase in Casino. That's an outstanding foot chase in my opinion. I love the pre-title sequence to Spectre. Obviously, it's not balls out action, but I love that. I love that they were doing something like a level above with the helicopter and the flip and all that kind of stuff. And those are 3 occasions where Bond's really stepped up and delivered something truly amazing. What about you? What are your thoughts?
Do you think though 1 or 2 per film is enough? Do you think they could do 3 or 4 per film, or is that?
I would rather have 1 all-time classic sequence than 3 that kind of almost do it.
Yes, yeah, completely. Oh, 100%. Yeah, I agree. Well, I tell you what, I've sort of basically the main point of this episode is we both watched Mission Impossible. We both came out absolutely loving it, and we're basically blown away by it mainly. And it was pretty much all to do with the stunt work, and script was decent as well. So the main thing we're trying to get at is, okay, does Bond 25 need to react to Mission Impossible? Has Mission Impossible success critically and both with general audience as well? Has that put pressure on Bond to sort of step it up a notch? Yes or no?
I don't think you step it up a notch. I think you sidestep and go in a different direction, because knowing the reviews Mission Impossible got, I feel like you don't. I don't think at this stage of the game you can beat that, really. I think you've just got to do something different to because if you try and emulate anything they did, you're always going to be a runner-up. You know what I mean? I think it's my vote would be to think about a more sort of more of getting a cool story, more along the lines of From Russia with Love, where there's just tension all the way, flipping things around. So maybe doing something like the Scaramanga story, where somebody's out for Bond from day one and he doesn't know where it's coming from, but he's on the back foot throughout the entire movie. Do you know what I mean? Something like that, where the tension's always up there, like those old sort of 70s paranoia movies. You know, like what's the one I watched with Dustin Hoffman recently, Marathon Man, that kind of thing, where he's just always on the run and stuff like that. I feel like going down that route rather than trying to compete directly with Fallout would be a better option. Yeah.
Definitely. I think tense scenes work so well within the spy genre, and I think Bond has had some beauties before. You know, I think sneaky Bond, and I think real sort of tense moments. You know, in From Russia with Love, that Red Grant is stalking Bond as an audience member when Bond doesn't even know. Yeah, and that sets the bar in terms of something's going to happen, and you're gripped by it. And I think that is playing to Bond's strengths when you have sort of setups that are similar to that. So in terms of story then, do you think we want less of Bond going rogue? This speaks specifically about Daniel Craig's last film, Bond 25. Do we want a standalone piece? Do you want it connected to the previous ones? Do we want less of him going rogue, less of the backstory with the parents and everything like that? What do you think we've had too much of that, or is it been fine and we should keep it for Daniel's last?
Yeah, he pretty much does it every time, doesn't he? Which is, I think something like that should be used sparingly. You know what I mean? Because otherwise you run the danger of it being like, oh, well, he's just going to go and do what he wants anyway. Do you know what I mean? And then it sort of cheapens that mechanic in the movie. You know, I feel like if you said to me, what do you really want? Wave your magic wand and get what you really want for Bond 25. I do want that Shatterhand story. I would love to see that, you know. But ultimately, if they forge ahead with the John Hodge script, then, you know, that's what we're getting. And if it's standalone, unrelated to the previous ones, then so be it. I'm on board with what they want to dish out at the end of the day. So, yeah, there's my answer.
Okay, it is tricky, isn't it? Yeah. It's like with the recent things that's happened, obviously with Danny Boyle leaving and everything like that. It's sort of put your mind in a little bit of a spin, hasn't it, in terms of what's going on and what you think should happen. And basically, we just want a bang up film, don't we? Yeah. We want a film with a really, really strong script, really strong characters, no damsels in distress. You know, Bond. It doesn't always have to go back to sort of too much backstory. You can set story in the present time in terms of like the tenseness, like you've said before, you know, set up scenes that are so effective and impactful. And you don't, sometimes you don't need like a history to go with that scene. You can be in that moment, if you know what I mean.
Look at Bond versus Le Chiffre across the card table there, and just how amazing those sequences are, you know. And I always think, I remember when I watched Frost Nixon, and obviously that was John Logan, wasn't it? And, you know, I was like, that's cool, because that is a film about an interview, a conversation between two people. And it really excited me that he was going to be involved with Bond, because I'm like, how do you make two dudes having a conversation for 2 hours intriguing, you know, and exciting? And he really pulled it off. If you haven't seen Frost Nixon, go and watch it, because it's a masterclass in tension and suspense, just from two dudes facing off in an interview, which sounds like the most dull fucking thing you've ever heard in your life. But when you watch it, it's done so well. And I feel like, you know, if at this stage of the game, you don't have somebody of the physical caliber of a Tom Cruise that can jump around and do all that stuff, which you can't.
That won't ever happen. Basically, that's impossible.
The only possible way is if the next dude who comes in is like 30 years old and he's a fucking athlete. Do you know what I mean? And he can pull off all this amazing stuff. But, you know, with Daniel at this stage of the game, he's knocking on a bit now. He's obviously saying, "Oh, these Bond films really hurt these days." You know, he's getting injured every time, pretty much. You're not going to get that. So I would say that is the way you beat it. You write a really smart thriller that is, you know, in the same sort of world as a Frost Nixon, where it's all about that tension and the interplay between characters. And you think of all those Fleming scenes where it's Bond at the card table, he knows somebody's cheating and he's trying to work out how, and then B, how he's going to beat them, you know, or the golf game in Goldfinger, how amazing and memorable those scenes are. There's not a gunshot among them. There's not an explosion anywhere to be found. And those are some of the best scenes in the whole series, you know. Well, it's do things like that, you know.
I know you finished it really recently, and I'm only a few chapters in, but I'm absolutely loving Forever and a Day.
Me too.
I am absolutely loving it. And that similarly has scenes written which you're like, wow, this is killer stuff. And it could easily translate to the screen. Yeah. But again, it's not like bombs going off or stuff like that. So yeah, no, completely agree.
I want to talk to you about that book so badly, but I don't want to say a word because obviously I want you to read the whole thing.
We will do it. We'll
do an episode on that for sure. There's a way of doing it. The great thing about that book is it's not like balls out, action packed set pieces. It's Bond just being really cool throughout the whole book, and you could I'd love to see that made into a film. That's instantly jumped to the top of my favorite continuation book list now. I love Colonel Sun, but at the moment I think it's at least level pegging with Colonel Sun. I think he's really knocked it out of the park this time with Forever and a Day. But yeah, like I think that's the way forward here. Isn't to try out action scenes for the sake of it. Be like, okay, this is the formula. This is that stage of the film, like midway where we need an action sequence. We had the Miami airport sequence here in Casino. So for this film, this is, roughly 40 minutes in, we need to have an action sequence here as well. Let's not do that, unless it's the best action sequence you've ever seen.
Well, you need originality. That's what it's about, isn't it? You need the audience to see something they haven't seen before that puts them on the edge of the seat, like we said earlier. And that comes with creativity from your director, your stunt coordinator, your writers. They're the people that are meant to be coming up with this stuff. Yeah. They're the ones who should be in touch with people who are doing certain things in the world that no one else is, that they can use on the screen. And if it's done well and done right, then that's that's Bond leading the field. So that's down to those guys who should be sort of looking into those areas. Obviously, script depending. So there's definitely that side of things. So yeah, man, I agree. I hopefully we'll get some more tidbits along the way. One of the nods actually, which I wanted to mention, the foot chase through London. Yeah, I did notice that in the background you see a lot of St. Paul's Cathedral. Now, what other Bond film was there going to be a foot chase with St. Paul's Cathedral in the background?
Obviously, on Her Majesty's Secret Service. Yeah, the cut sequence.
And I wonder if that's a little nod to it. I really do. Because it's quite an interesting little bit.
You can't make an action spy movie like a Mission Impossible series without paying homage to Bond. That's why Jason Bourne has the initials JB. You don't, if you're going to make a spy series like that, you don't give your lead character the initials JB. You just don't do it unless you're in some way paying tribute to it. And it's you have to pay tribute to the dude who invented it, basically. If you're going to do that stuff.
Ethan Hunt is not JB, but he's got the exact same number of letters in his name as James Bond, Ethan Hunt.
I guess he does.
So that's got to be part of it.
And I tell you what, as well, something to consider is that we're 50 odd years in with Bond now. The brand recognition of James Bond absolutely obliterates the brand recognition of an Ethan Hunt or even a Mission Impossible. Of course it does. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course it does. Yeah.
Everybody from young kids to your granddad who's 100 years old know who James Bond is. They know what he stands for. You know what that means. Every time you put on a suit with a dicky bow, every man on the planet looks into the mirror and be like, oh, look at me, I look a bit like Bond. You don't get that. There's no Ethan Hunt radio podcast, is there? You know what I mean? There isn't. Maybe we should start one after Fallout. Yeah, but like there isn't that. And I suppose there is the danger when you've got that daddy brand recognition to there is that temptation to maybe coast on that a little bit because it is Bond and you can get away with things. But ultimately, sooner or later, I suppose you've got to think, man, where are we in the journey here? We're in when you think of all the previous Bonds, their best work is typically done within the first three films. You know what I mean? It's like, with the possible exception of Connery, like the first three films are like bang on the money, and then they gradually just drop off a little bit after that, and then the quality goes down, and then the last film for most Bond actors is like, yeah, okay, it's time to move on now. Do you know what I mean? It is that, and we're at that stage with Daniel now. So it's a tough part of the process to be in now, and especially if it's like this is going to be his last one. There's a different feeling behind that than if it was the first film of the next guy. You know what I mean? We're at an awkward stage. No one knew Die Another Day was going to be Pierce's last film, or License to Kill was going to be Tim's, or even A View to a Kill. They might have suspected, but Roger could have kept on going if he wanted to. Whereas everyone knows, the whole world over knows that this is going to be Daniel's last film, and I think this is hopefully will be the one to break the mold in terms of we get an absolute belter of a film for his last film. But it's just a little bit of a shame when things aren't quite gelling. Obviously, there's been quite a bit of disruption and stuff, and that you got to think about that. That things aren't right at home, so to speak. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that Eon won't come through and like pull out all the stops. And we're talking about
Mission Impossible, because at the moment in time, they are doing brilliant work. If we were looking 10 years ago, we'd be talking about Bourne, because the Bournes came out, obviously they did really well and definitely had an influence on Bond.
Yeah.
Going back even further, like the 80s action films, you're talking about your Lethal Weapons, your Die Hards and everything, that had an influence. It definitely did. So there's always been competitors to Bond throughout Bond's history. And Bond has remained. Bond will be going well after Mission Impossible finished.
Yeah.
Like, even if they bring someone else after Tom Cruise to do whatever, however way they play it, that might go on for one little more, and that'll be it, you know?
Yeah.
Bond will just continue because of the love for it and because they've done so well for so long.
Yeah.
But it just needs to stay at that level. And it's always going to have this competition. It's always going to have adversaries that it has to face off against.
Yeah.
And every time that they sort of creep up on Bond in terms of getting that little, you know, to that level, that really high level, they've just got to respond and react, and not directly in terms of copying them, because that's definitely not the way to go.
Yeah.
I remember watching Quantum, the foot chase, thinking, well, that exact shot is right out of Jason Bourne. I know it's the same second unit director, but it was I could edit that out, put it in the Bond film, and vice versa, and it would have looked exactly the same. And you don't want that. Okay, we want different things, but we still want Bond to obviously be the best, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Amen to that.
And original and everything like that.
I tell you what, though, just to kind of round out today's conversation, I know what we need to do for Bond 25. I've just solved it while you were having that little chat there.
Oh, nice.
It's Bond in space, isn't it? That's how you do it.
Well, oh, mate, I think that is, you know what? That is the script that I think Danny Boyle and John Hodge had. Bond was basically going to go to the moon and then land on the dark side, where basically Blofeld was hidden. He was put in a prison cell on the dark side of the moon. And then Hinks comes on and he's got like a massive astronaut helmet, which he uses to headbutt Bond. But in doing so, the helmet cracks. And then obviously he gets his little fingernails caught as he tries to get it off. And then,
hoist by his own petard.
And then Moneypenny sort of flies around the moon, picks up James, and then they come back.
Now that is a Bond film I think we all want to see. Just for the comedy value alone. Yeah.
Oh, definitely, man. Okay, so before we totally finish, I just have to mention Henry Cavill, okay? Now, I know you and I are both fans of Aidan Turner. You don't like to talk. There's been so much about Idris Elba, and although he's brilliant and he's a great actor, I just think age is the factor there. Yeah. Everyone's, and the thing that you said on the radio the other day about Barbara would not be talking or having conversations with someone while Daniel was still Bond or while anyone else was still Bond. And that's so true. And all the other thing is just nonsense. But after filming Mission Impossible, this is what Henry Cavill had to say about the Bond role. Obviously, he would have been asked. He said, "I would love to do it, of course. I think Bond would be a really fun role. It's British, it's cool. I think that now that I have my Mission Impossible badge, we can do real stunts and really amp it up as well. Not to say they weren't doing real stunts. I'm just saying it would be fun for me to actually take what I've learnt on this and carry it through to a movie like Bond. I'd love to play a Brit. I don't get to play a Brit very often, so yes, I would love the opportunity. If they were to ask, I would say yes." Now, he's talking about almost doing it Tom Cruise Ethan Hunt thing, but in the James Bond role. Well, what are your thoughts on that, Tom?
Well, let me tell you this. I was all for Aidan Turner pre-Mission Impossible Fallout. I thought, the problem is Henry Cavill is Superman, right? And I thought they're not going to have Superman and Bond be Superman at the same time and all that kind of stuff. And I think what's put me off Cavill since he's been Superman is the fact that Superman is just, he's a bit of a wet blanket character, isn't he, in my book? He's just such a goody two-shoes, and nobody likes a goody two-shoes. You know what I mean? He's all like, oh, take your vitamins, children, make sure you go to church on Sundays and all that crap. And it's just like, come on, Superman, grow a pair of bollocks, You look at somebody like Batman, he's got all that conflict going on and all that like grittiness going on. And Batman's like the second coolest character of all time in my book. Now, when I came out of Fallout, I immediately turned to my missus and I said, I want Cavill for Bond now. He's immediately jumped into my top list. I feel like I don't think the Superman movies have made him that household name yet. When you look at the films he's done outside of that world, The Man from U.N.C.L.E. was a bit of a flop, wasn't it? That didn't really go anywhere. I
absolutely loved it. I know you weren't keen, but I loved it. And I thought he was great in it as well. I'll just put that
The problem with that for me is I felt like that was set piece after set piece in the wrong sort of way. It was, that's another discussion. Anyway, we'll do that another time.
Next week, we will be reviewing
Man with the golden gun. Man from U.N.C.L.E. versus Bond 25. Yeah. But he's not become that super synonymous person. I don't even think Henry Cavill is that household name yet. Still, even though he's Superman, I feel like these movies have kind of flown under the radar of the general population. They obviously make a lot of money, but I don't think he is Superman when I look at him.
But is he Bond? Could he?
I
be
think
Bond?
he could be. Yeah, and I'd be excited to see him as Bond. And he's the right age. He's a good-looking dude. I feel like he commands the present. He's a handsome fella. I saw him on Graham Norton recently, and he said when he got his first big paycheck, he went and bought himself an Aston Martin DBS. And I'm like, that's the boy right there. You know what I mean? He's jumped up to the top of my list. And if I put him side by side with Aidan Turner, I'm like, Cavill gets the job as far as I'm concerned.
He's a big lad as well. He could definitely do the physical stuff, and he's obviously keen on doing the stunts. And if they did, well, obviously we're saying we can't top Tom Cruise, but if you did want that little bit more of realism within the action world, who knows? But then again, he has just done the one film. It still is a big, takes a lot to do everything like that. And you've got the insurance side of things as well. Yeah. But yeah, the more I think about it, the more, Aidan Turner, if Bond became an absolute bastard, which they'd never really do, I just want to see a cruel Bond, because that's one side of Bond that doesn't get looked at enough. And I think Aidan Turner would do that brilliantly. If they don't go down that route, you've got your Tom Hardy and your Chris Nolan, if that ever happened, but that's unlikely, isn't it? And I don't think that's going to happen. I don't
want to see Tom Hardy as Bond.
No. But I think Henry Cavill, don't forget, obviously, it was down to him and Daniel Craig for Casino. And he was only 22 at the time. So they've obviously thought about him way back when. And he's obviously matured since then a hell of a lot, and his acting chops have grown in terms of what he's been in. So he's without a doubt. I think he could be a potential there. But again, you're getting people out there will be he can't do that. Yeah. Now I have heard some people say he's a little bit wooden or a little bit one-dimensional in terms of his roles. What would you say to that?
I know what you mean. This is because he's. When he's Napoleon Solo, he was very sort of like smooth and a bit too sort of comedic. It's obviously a similar world to Bond, but he wasn't playing a really Bond-like character. He kind of was, but at the same time, Napoleon Solo is a lot more of a lighter comedic character than Bond is, right? Yeah. So I wouldn't use that as my judgment. I've seen him as Superman, obviously, and I'm just like, Superman's just a bit of a wet blanket. Yeah. And of course, I don't get the Bond feelings from him. When I see him in the Tudors, that first episode of him, he's literally rolling around in bed with this girl. And I remember seeing that and I was like, oh, I see the Bond in him there. Like, I really see that.
He could be a lover man without
exactly.
a doubt,
Exactly. Yeah. And then when I come out of Fallout, seeing the physicality of him in that bathroom fight and throughout the film, he does have a commanding presence. And he's jumped right up to the top of my list. And at the end of the day, I think there's something to be said for the kind of roles he plays, which is kind of like the dashing kind of leading man, the strong-jawed Superman and all that kind of stuff. Like that is obviously what he's built for. You look at somebody like Brosnan and he has the same thing, like a very strikingly good-looking dude. And at the same time, I don't really ever want to see Pierce do anything but Bond. Do you know what I mean? I certainly have not gone to see Mamma Mia 1 or 2. I don't want to put that into my brain because that'll damage me. It'll damage me if I see that. Yeah. But it's kind of like Brosnan was made to be Bond. There was nothing else that he was meant to do other than that. And I know he'd hate me to say that, but it's true. He was. You just look at that dude in Remington Steele or in the 80s. You can just see the Bond in him. And I feel like that might be Cavill's thing. People say he might be a bit wooden in various roles. It's because he hasn't played Bond yet, and he's meant to play Bond. I think, and that's what it is. And he hasn't been
given the scripts as well. I think for sort of range of character, and you see it in certain little scenes that he does where he could do the sort of bit more aggressive side to him and a bit more the darker side to him. It is there. And he could pull off the one-liners, I think, as well, if they went down that route.
If they announced it, I'd be very excited. I'd be fully on board with that. And I would still be with Aidan Turner too, but Cavill's. I need to see Cavill. I need to see Aidan in more stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? sort of fully. But after Fallout, I'm 100% behind Cavill for sure.
There we are. So we'll have to see. But overall, then, what final thoughts on Bond Mission Impossible?
Load of rubbish, mate. Mission Impossible. Didn't like it one bit.
No.
Yeah, no. I think Bond's got his work cut out for him, especially in the current climate with the Danny Boyle thing. He's got his work cut out for him, and I am fully behind him coming out all guns blazing and coming out.
They've got to, isn't it?
There's
but basically, this is the time where it has to be a big, massive Bond film, and they have to tick so many. They have to get it right.
Yeah.
And I think they will. The thing is, Casino Royale, there's hardly anything wrong with that film.
No.
Like it's almost flawless in terms of so many things. I know people have different opinions, and that's fair enough. And Quantum, I know people weren't a big fan of it, but it's slim and it's tight in terms of what it is. I know sort of some of the action scenes weren't great and so on, and the script needed work. But I think if you compare Skyfall and Spectre to Casino, both of them, Skyfall and Spectre, have great scenes and brilliant moments and really, really like top-notch Bond stuff. But as an overall feel, they are not as smooth, I don't think, as Casino, or as flawless as Casino, like incomparable. And I think we need another one of those. If we can bookend Daniel's tenure with Casino and something that's equally as good as that, then he'll go out on a bang, definitely.
Absolutely. Out on a kiss, bang, bang. Let's hope so.
Hey.
Absolutely. Good stuff. I feel like I got so into this episode. I have burnt some calories sitting here talking about this. I've got into it. I need to have a little lie down, much like how I was after Fallout.
Yes, indeed. And me too. Okay. So shall we get cracking with the answer in the Bond trivia?
Let's do it. So we had a trivia question from Hendricks Jordan, which we will quickly play for you again now.
First part of the question. Which Bond girl actresses were, and still are, actually older than the actors who have played the Bond at the time in their respective movies? Second part. Which Bond girl, I'm referring to just one woman, which Bond girl was the one who had the biggest age gap to her Bond star in her respective Bond outing? A little hint for you, those were all different Bond actors.
All right. So I suppose famously, Pussy Galore, isn't it? That's where we're going to start.
Definitely. Yep, Pussy Galore, without a doubt. She was quite a bit older than Connery, I think. What was it, like 4 or 5 years older than Connery? Something like that.
I don't know off the top of my head, but
because he was, what would he have been, 34, and I think she was 38, 39, something like that. So yeah, but definitely Pussy Galore. I can think of one definitely not too long after that. You got Diana Rigg and George.
Very true.
Obviously Diana Rigg, I don't think she was much older than George, but she was definitely older, maybe a year or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So Diana Rigg. Do we count Monica Bellucci, Lucia Sciarra? Did he? Oh, yeah, he did. Yeah, because he shagged her, didn't he? So yeah, according
as
to the
eloquently
rules.
put as Henrik there. Yeah, very nice.
Yeah. So obviously she was what? She's definitely older than Daniel. What, 3 years, 4 years, something like that, I think.
Yeah.
Any others who were older? Definitely none of them were older than Rog, were they?
Absolutely not. No.
Tim, no. I think is that it? Pierce? I can't think of any others. What about Sophie Marceau? No, Sophie Marceau was still younger than Pierce, I think.
I think my vote for the oldest age gap would be Pussy Galore, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. For the oldest age gap, Pussy was, I think it was about 4 or 5 years. And I think the other two, Diana Rigg was a year or two, and then Lucia Sciarra was maybe 3 years or something. Yeah, I'd say Pussy out of that one.
All right.
Okay, so what was the other part of the question? It was who was the biggest age gap in total. Was that part of the question?
Yeah, I think that's the Pussy Galore bit, I think.
Oh, sorry, I thought he meant part 2 was like between which girl in the entire series is the biggest age gap between the girl and Bond, as in the girl being younger and Bond being older. Oh, maybe I got that wrong.
Don't know. I'm confused.
No. All right. Because I was thinking if that's the case, it would probably be Jenny Flex, wouldn't it? Because she was like what, 17, 18,
I
18 I think she
I
was.
think maybe
and
you're right,
obviously
yes.
Rog was 57 or something crazy. But maybe I misinterpreted that. So if
I
did, then
think
forget
I'm
that.
not very clever, so I'm sure you've
No,
interpreted
I'm
it
not
right,
very
and I'm the one that's screwed that up. But let's turn it over to Henrik then.
Yeah.
And then
Either
we'll
way, we'll
find
say
out.
pussy, yeah?
Indeed. Yeah.
Hello, it's Henrik Jordan again with the answer to my trivia question concerning the Bond girls. The only 3 actresses who are actually older than their respective Bond stars are Honor Blackman, Diana Rigg, and Monica Bellucci.
Yeah.
And the one actress with the biggest age gap was Carol Bouquet. She was born in August 1957, whilst Sir Roger was born in October 1927. So it's nearly 30 years of age difference.
I suppose
Looking
Jenny
forward
Flex
to
is...
the Piers and Daniel movie reviews of you guys, and always keeping the British end up. Bye.
Very nice. Cool stuff. Good question, Henrik. I enjoyed that. Yeah, absolutely. So, Roger gets the age gap points.
That's it. And the whole Jenny Flex thing, they obviously didn't sleep together, did they? So that definitely wouldn't have counted anyway.
Yeah.
Cool. Carol Bouquet. Nice one. Good question, Henrik. Good
Good
question.
stuff. Okay, good stuff. Next up then, Chris, it's time for the Guess the Quote Round.
Bum, 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 bum. James Bond.
Oh, I don't know why that theme tune makes me laugh so much, but it does. All right, lovely stuff. Now, obviously, this is the Guess the Quote round, where one of us has a quote for the other one, and we have to guess what it is. And it was your turn last time, if I believe.
It was. And my quote last time was, not a word of protest.
That is very good. I must say, your delivery is bang on the money as well. And the problem is, the character's name escapes me, but I know exactly who it is. It's in the room where he's got the machete. He's gonna
what
Casino
film?
Royale. He's got the machete. He's gonna chop off Valenka's arm.
Yeah.
Lashif's there. He doesn't say a word, and he obviously doesn't do it. And this is not a word of protest. So he's the dude that Lashif has ripped off, basically, and he's come to get his money back.
Stephen Albano.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Oh, very nice. All right,
yeah.
I've learned
There we are.
something today.
Excellent stuff. Well done, Tommy. Got that on the money. Now, have you got one for me this week?
I do. My quote is, what's the matter? I'll do that for you one more time.
Yeah, please, go on.
What's the matter?
Come on. Wait a minute. Oh, mate, that's a tricky one. It's in there somewhere. I'll have to have a good think about that one.
All right, very nice.
Like
Okie dokie then. We had a listener quote last time from Brian from California. So we'll have a little reminder of what that one was.
Once again, the quote is,
I love that quote, man. It's so good.
It's a good one, isn't it? What are you thinking? Are you what?
Right, I'm going to say what film I am, and
Right.
if you get it right, you go for what scene or what person. I'm thinking it's from Majesties.
From Majesties.
Yes. What? You're thinking something else. Then what film are you thinking?
Huh. All right.
Go on. No. What film are you thinking?
I was thinking. Who was I thinking? First of all, I was thinking the dude from Spy in the Mujaba Club, the Ahmed guy.
Oh yeah. No, maybe. It could
But
be
then I'm
him.
thinking, actually, maybe it's not him. Now you've said that. You've thrown me.
Oh no,
But-
because maybe it isn't.
So go on, Majesty. Is it
I
Gunther?
think-
Gunther?
No, I think it's when he's in the car, with our mate Terry Mountain, with Raphael and Che and all that lot, when they're going to see Draco in the Rolls Royce with the top down.
That is a beauty. If that's the one, that is a beauty. All right.
Do you know the one?
Yeah,
No,
I
but
do.
you know the character.
The dude with the
I'm on
knife.
about.
Yeah. All right. No, now
I'm
you've
pretty
said
sure
that.
because it's
you've done
really
it.
really heavily done in the film, and it
Yeah.
sounded like that.
All right. Let's
Right.
let's have a listen to Brian's answer then. I think you've probably got it there.
and of course the answer to that is it's from On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and that quote is from the one of Draco's thugs that Bond fights in the hotel room earlier, and that quote is specifically from the scene where Bond is led at knife point and he's taken to Draco's layer. So thank you, and I'm greatly enjoying the show, and I only discovered it a few weeks ago, but I'm having a lot of fun going back and listening to the old episodes, so cheers.
Very nice. You pinned the tail on the donkey there, Chris. I'm proud of you, man. Good stuff.
I'm happy with that one. I'm really happy because it was really well done. Like really, really well done.
Yeah, it was an excellent performance.
Yeah.
Now I know what it is. That's the one. Good stuff. Yeah. Well, welcome aboard, Brian. It's good to hear we've got a new listener there, and you're going through that back catalogue. There's many, many hours of stuff to get through there. Good God, man. Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff, but welcome aboard. Excellent quote. Now we have a new listener quote from Mr. Jared Alberic, I think you say it, but let's have a listen and then we will have a chat.
Hey guys, once again, this is Jared Albrecht, the yard sale artist from On Her Majesty's Secret Podcast. Since I had you on the line, I figured I'd do a listener quote for you. So what do you have on this? I can't breathe. Once again, that's I can't breathe. Good luck, fellas, and I'll leave a message in just a minute with the answer.
Well,
yes,
I'm confident on that one. Absolutely,
I am as well. Yeah. I think every single person listening to this podcast is pretty confident of what it is. But equally, that was a very good delivery as well.
It was indeed. It
was.
And with that character, I mean, what a way to go! Let's face it.
Oh, mate, I'd be happy if that, if that's how the cards were dealt in my sort of fate. I'd be like, fair enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even if I was 80 when it happened.
Indeed. So, Chris, I'll tell you what it's time for, mate. You ready?
Okay.
It's time for.
Who wrote the score for Live and Let Die? Who played Helga Brandt and how did she die? Who wants to stockpile the water in Bolivia? It's Tommy Trivia.
That's right. It's time for Tommy Trivia. This is where Chris breaks out the 007 Trivial Pursuit deck and quizzes me on the questions. So what do you got for me this week, dude?
Okay, we're going to start with locations this week, Tommy. And the first question is, in which country is Skyfall?
In which country is Skyfall? Well, I could say Great Britain, but I think it's probably Scotland that is where they're barking.
I think they'll be... Yes, it is. Scotland indeed. Nice. Well done. Okay, question 2 is on crew and behind the scenes. Who designed the interior set of Fort Knox?
That would be Ken Adam.
I think it would. Oh, you're right, Tommy.
Nice.
Yes, superb. 2 out of 2. Okay, we're on to casting characters. What does Zhao have embedded in his face?
Diamonds.
And do you know what sort of diamonds?
Oh, conflict diamonds.
It doesn't even say that, but you get an extra point because you knew about Die Another Day. Super, man. I can't believe you love that film so much. Okay, on to the films. We have 3 more questions to go. Tommy, you are doing brilliant. We are on to the films, which is Stromberg's elevator in his Atlantis lair has a trapdoor that leads to what?
The Shark Tank.
Yes, indeedy.
Nicely
Lovely.
done.
Okay, 2 more. We're on to the vehicles. You love the vehicles.
I do.
What make and model of car does Bond... I think you know this one. What make and model of car does Bond drive to Miss Taro's house?
A Sunbeam Beam Alpine.
Yes!
I knew that one.
Yeah.
I'm not good at the secondary cars, as we learned last time. But nice. I'm happy with that.
On the main Bond one. Superb. Yeah. Okay, so this is for a full sweep. This question is gadgets and weapons. What do Q's bagpipes conceal?
It's a flamethrower, isn't it?
I want 2 answers. That is one of them.
Flamethrower and a machine gun.
Yes, Tommy. So nice. There we go. Sweeping the board again. I think you're getting too good at these.
I've been practicing, man. I've been revising. I've been boning up on my
nice.
Trivial Pursuit knowledge.
Bit of toilet time reading through.
Absolutely. Yeah. I spend a lot of time in there, man. So I can rack up some hours after a few weeks. It's good.
Nice.
Yeah.
There we go. Brilliant.
All right, wicked. It's time for the final game of the day before we call it a day, and it is time for. It's the music cue. That's right. It's time for Guess the Music Cue, obviously. Now, this is where Chris furnishes us with a short little clippet of a Bond piece of score. And we have to guess what the film is and what scene it's from as well. So what did you have for us last time?
Right, last time you know, and everyone listening knows the film straight away, but the scene, I'll be intrigued to know if you get it. Let's play last week's Guess the Music Cue clip.
There it is.
I just want to listen to that on loop.
Me too.
So
That's
good.
a nice little riff. I like it. It's nice.
Yeah.
Yes, I know exactly what that is. I'm going to come out all guns blazing. Live and Let Die,
Go for
obviously.
it. Yes, indeed. Yep, brilliant.
Following up, he comes in a plane. He brings destruction and all that stuff.
Bond, yeah, exactly. Bond's traveling to New York on the plane, mate. I am really impressed with that.
Thanks,
because
man.
Live and Let Die, I love it, but there are parts of the soundtrack where it's sort of interwoven little in some of the scenes. But yeah, got that absolutely spot on.
Do you know what? After doing the Live and Let Die episode with John recently, I really love that riff that you get in there, where it comes up just after the clip that you got, where it's like bam, 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 bam.
Yeah.
That's class.
It's quality, isn't it? It really is.
It's nice.
Okay, superb, man. Okay, so we have a new Guess the Music Cue for this week. Now, this one, actually, I'm not going to say anything. Let's have a listen and see what you think.
Let's do it.
Ooh. Now, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think I know. I think I'm on the right track.
You got a week to think about it. You got a week to think about it.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm on there. I think friend of JBR, Mark O'Connell, might be a particular fan of this one.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah.
I don't know.
We'll have to wait.
I might be barking up the wrong tree. All right, good stuff. Lovely. Okay, today was fun, man. I enjoyed today's episode. It was a difficult subject as a hardcore Bond loving fan. You know, it's like you know, it's a challenge to openly admit feelings, but we did it.
It was needed as well because I know not everyone. Fans of the Mission Impossible or even Fallout. I know there are one or two out there who weren't keen on it, but when you've got such an overall sort of, you know, critical acclaim for it, for the type of film it's trying to be, obviously not talking Oscars or anything like that, but in terms of it was trying to be a balls out action movie and it delivers in spades on that count. And I think basically comparing it to Bond is not fair in a way because they are different beasts, but we just want certain areas of Bond just to step up a notch, not go all out crazy, but you know, we just want the solid script, tense scenes, sneaky Bond, and when it does do action, you know, we want to be on the edge of our seats. We want to see stuff that we haven't seen before, and when we want to see Bond in peril. And if we get those things, that is going to elevate whatever happens in Bond 25 to the max.
Absolutely. Good stuff. All right. Amen to that. All right. James Bond Radio will return with a Music of Bond episode next week, Chris. Are you excited for that?
I am. Are we reviewing a soundtrack? Something tells me we might be doing something a little bit different next time.
A little bit different indeed. I tell you what, I'm looking forward to it. I know what it is.
Am as well.
And I'm looking forward to it, mate. So I don't think we should say anything more other than, right. Music of Bond is back next week. That also means the return of J.W. Pepper himself, John Williams. I think we need to start calling him J.W. more. I think that should be his thing.
It's from now on, that's it. That's all he's going to be known as, J.W.
Good stuff.
Cool.
All right, James Bond Radio will return next week. We will see you then. Until then, bye.
Bye. You didn't say I've been Tom Sears.
Oh shit, I didn't I? Bollocks. I've been Tom Sears.
I've been Chris Wright.
We'll
see you next time.
Bye.
There we go.